Record the Zoom as well, Chair Karnik, yeah. We lost Armine.
Oh, sorry. Himakan?
Aye.
Good morning. Good morning in the Armenia and Artsakh. Good evening in the United States. I am Karnik Kirkonian of Armenian Rights Watch, and I'm joined by my co-chair of Armenian Rights Watch, Garo Ghazarian. Armenian Rights Watch, of course, is a standing committee of the Armenian Bar Association. Less than 24 hours ago, Azerbaijan launched a clearly pre-planned large-scale military offensive against the people of Artsakh. Armed with extensive military and aid from Turkey, Azerbaijan struck a geographically wide range of civilian targets in cities across Artsakh. Military rule has been established, a military draft is underway, and as we speak, the region is in a heightened state of alert. We are fortunate enough to be joined by our partners on the ground in Stepanakert and Yerevan to discuss what has happened, what is happening, and what can be done. I'd like to introduce Mr. Zares Sinanyan, who is the High Commissioner of Diasporan Affairs of the Republic of Armenia, Mr. Arman Tatoyan, who is the Human Rights Ombudsman of the Republic of Armenia, both joining us from Yerevan. Also, we have with us today Mr. Artak Beglayan, who is the Human Rights Ombudsman of the Republic of Artsakh, and Ms. Armina Alexanyan, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Artsakh. If I may, I'd like to begin with you, Ms. Alexanyan. Would you be able to give us an overview of the last 24 hours?
Good morning, good evening, everyone. Yes, as you have mentioned, Garnik, Azerbaijan has launched a large-scale attack on the entire line of contact of the Republic of Artsakh. This time, it did not limit itself only by firing at the positions of the line of contact, but it also deliberately targeted civilian settlements, including capital Stepanakert, as well as regional centers and nearby villages. People had to go to the shelters. Most of them are still in the bunkers as we talk, because they had to spend the night there. And in Stepanakert now, thank God, is calm at this moment, and the night has been relatively calm. But in the region, we have information that it's not so calm, especially the regions that are border-lying. They are still in the bunkers, the population, so the situation is still tense.
And Ms. Alexander, if you can explain in terms of the attacks, were they on civilian structures? Do we know what the extent of those attacks have been in terms of targets?
Well, it's obvious that they targeted the civilian structures because infrastructure like hospitals, warehouses, and buildings like that, schools also have been targeted, and some of them were hit. So yes, I mean, if we analyze the buildings that they have hit, we can say that it was a very much pre-planned and targeted attack.
To the extent, forgive me, Karnik, to the extent that the attacks have now been characterized as large scale, in what respect do they differ from the skirmishes, if you will, of a couple months ago, or the 4-day war of 2016? Is it the military equipment and the might of the enemy forces that are being brought upon the civilian population that is the difference?
Compared to the skirmishes, of course, the difference is huge. Compared to 2016, the scope of and the volume of the armaments used, as well as manpower involved, of course, this is much larger, because simultaneously they attacked on the entire line of contact, not just certain sections of it, but in its entirety, as well as at the same time they attacked the rear. the settlements far away from the border, like capital Stepanakert. So here we can say that, yes, it was a two-way process, if you wish. It was attack on the positions as well as attacks on civilians. And they made no secret of the fact that they will be hitting civilian settlements.
Artsakh, speaking of civilian settlements, Karnik, is this an appropriate time to ask Artsakh about the Human Rights Defender's Office and the assessment on the ground in terms of loss of human life vis-a-vis war crimes type rockets or weapons that have been raining on civilian sections of the Republic of Artsakh?
Garo, we assessed initially what happened and what kind of effects there are. It's very initial assessment because firstly, the extent is too large. Secondly, at this situation, it's not easy to collect information. At this moment, based on our calculation, we have 2 confirmed deaths among civilians, 1 lady and 1 child, and more than 30 wounded among civilians, many children, women, including, yesterday I wrote about that, a pregnant woman, and luckily the doctors could save both her and baby's lives. And the geography of those injured is too large, from north to south, from all the regions, including Stepanakert, because now, in comparison with 2016, Stepanakert was largely targeted by rocket systems and artillery and striking drones. And it's very clear that the attacks to the civilian population was very targeted and intentional, because many places civilian population was too far from military objects. That's why it's very obvious that the Azerbaijani side roughly violated the international humanitarian law norms. But I guess in the upcoming days, our fact-finding mission will collect much more data. I'm sure, unfortunately, that the number will be increased, probably deaths and wounded too. Again, unfortunately, I'm sure that the Azerbaijani side will continue targeting civilian settlements too. And based on our initial calculation, the Azerbaijani side targeted more than 50 settlements, including all the towns, regional centers, including Berdzor, which is more than 80-90 kilometers far from the border, from the front line. And we have also very large infrastructure consequences, including houses, roads, electricity, gas pipeline, water pipeline, etc. But at this moment, I can't say what kind of extent, volume we have there. And also, it's very important to speak about the violations against our soldiers. We don't have at this moment confirmed proofs because military activities are now going on, and it's too hard to assess what happened. But given some facts, some small proofs, and also the hatred policy, Armenophobic policy of the Azerbaijani government in the recent, not only years, but also decades, but also, and also the heroization of 2016 violators, criminals. I'm sure that the Azerbaijani soldiers are very encouraged to do the same things, including could be beheadings, torture, etc., which we recorded, Artsakh Ombudsman recorded in his reports. I'm sure that in the upcoming days we'll have large proofs, unfortunately, again, about those war crimes too. But let's wait, and then when I have data, I will publish them.
Thank you, Mr. Beglarian. Mr. Tatoyan, I wanted you to chime in on that point. A couple of points, actually. One is the escalation of the conflict, whether or not reports overnight have indicated any escalation, and if so, what does that mean? And secondly, on this campaign of Armenophobia, do you see any escalation in that? And I believe, yeah.
The microphone, yeah, there you go.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Kerkonian. Good evening, dear friends in America. Well, I joined the observations of my colleague, Mr. Artsakh Beglarian, which, I mean, the statements which he provided. And I want just at the very outset to appreciate and express my thankfulness for his tremendous work, and his office resources are so quickly mobilized and very effectively used by launching fact-finding mission, analyzing and producing accurate data. This is very important. And we have, even I can say, every minute cooperation and joint work together, which is, I think, very important for these challenging times. When it comes to escalation and hate speech, I can say that there is since the very early morning, when the Azerbaijani military forces started shelling the towards Nagorno Karabakh, and of course civilian population, it is accompanied with massive hate speech. Of course, before that, like as Mr. Beglarian said, decades, we had this hate speech. By the way, not only against Armenians of Artsakh, but generally ethnic Armenians. Every person who has even any relation to Armenians, to Armenia, has some relation to ethnic Armenians. This is already a ground for massive hate speech, for calls for violence, etc. So, but this time it is, I can say this is a systemic Armenophobic statements that we observe. By the way, and I'm going very soon today to make a special statement, not only Azerbaijan, but from Turkish sources as well. And the monitoring shows that there are numerous groups, numerous pages. This can be either fake or real pages even. I mean, sometimes you even do not differentiate, let's say, what is fake, what is real. By the way, there are many fake profiles, Azerbaijani, Turkish, with Armenian names and surnames. And some of them even, they write, and I mean, they send messages in Armenian. And they disseminate largely videos, different texts with calls for violence, with videos of killings, etc. By the way, they're using videos not only from the April war, for example, but also for different the videos of other wars, of other atrocities. And this is very worrying thing. And we have to document this and to show to, at least from our side, from our standpoint, to international community. This is very important because, 2000 we have, and we have to look to consider these atrocities in connection with July Tavush, let's say, escalation, and also April war of 2016. And we will see that there are lots of common lines and signs in terms of hate speech, in terms of severity of actions, and by the way, the severe cause for violence. Even the human rights defender, I can bring just my office example. Whenever we make statements, you can follow just on Twitter under our tweets. There are numerous, massive, profile from different profiles, massive hate speech, and by the way, these profiles are also targeting citizens, including minors. This is very important. That is why I'm going to call on our society, on our people, to be very careful, especially in terms of, posting photos, or being careful, especially with their children, having their access, with their access to this internet. And I had some consultations with some IT specialists yesterday, and we came to a conclusion that the most aggressive and the most dangerous social media outlet is TikTok. It is very aggressively now a widespread already social media, because in other social media, at least you can control your page, and kind of at least more or less is secure. But with this TikTok, it's really very, I was told that it is really very difficult, and you have there very aggressive, let's say, materials very largely and very quickly being disseminated. So this was, and apparently, all actions, the severity, all these hostilities, they are in absolute violation of international humanitarian law, international human rights law. Apparently, there are indiscriminate attacks, and they don't give any. There is no difference whether these are military objects, these are civil objects. It does not matter. Peaceful population, women, children, elderly, all of them are the targets. And of course, it is important also to protect and to talk about the rights of our soldiers, right to life, etc. But the civilians are also the targets. And I have to say that, our soldiers, they are just defending. This has existential effect, and our soldiers are defending the right to live, the right to health of our compatriots. This is the important thing. And now they are under very heavy attacks, both in real, let's say, life, and real attacks, and virtual attacks. And we have to be very careful and to be organized, very organized, in combating all of these threats and challenges.
Now, Mr. Tatoyan, just to follow up on what you said, I'm sensing really two different types of strains here that are actually really important. There's the larger context of Armenophobia and attacks that are born out of that. And then there's also the concept of the false narrative that you indicated is being painted by Azerbaijan, Turkey, and perhaps their proxies through using fake accounts. Is that right? That we're combating really two things. One is this larger concept of Armenophobia, but in the present situation, given the attacks, there's also a false narrative being painted. Is that true?
Well, yes, and but I think the specific thing is that there is at a larger sense, there is this huge concept, and very developed, state-supported. I have to highlight this. This is state-supported hate speech and state-supported Armenophobia. But this, starting from yesterday, it is an organized, massive hate speech accompanied with massive hate speech. And I can say that even these are, if not all newly open pages, I don't know, but at least they are you know, these heavy attacks are conducted through these pages. With some of them, because we are also monitoring, they're very new to us as well. And it is clear that either they're kind of newly open, or you know, they started just using them against us. But definitely this is kind of a massive attack, very heavy, with hate speech, calls for violence. Again, you know, these videos of killings, of destroying civilian settlements, etc.
Mr. Sinanian, thank you for being able to join us. When we speak about social media and we speak about the PR war, if you will, and having just noticed an individual following us live commenting that Azerbaijan has 10 million people as its population, and the Republic of Artsakh has 150,000. What are the needs and the asks of the ministry, or the rather High Commissioner's Office of the Republic of Armenia, headed by you and your Chief of Staff, Sarah Anjargolian, from the Armenian diaspora, from the United States, from Europe, the Far East, Middle East, Canada, South America? How can we aid you and aid the republics of Armenia and Artsakh in those respects, on those fronts? Please.
Yes, thank you, Gato. I just first want to say hello to all of our friends who are joining us and watching this live, and to our colleagues from Stepanakert in Los Angeles. And I want to say, you know, this is, Mr. Tatoyan clearly outlined this issue very correctly. This is an existential struggle and part of a long-term struggle that we've been undergoing and sort of been getting the short end of the last 1,000 years. So for us, this is life or death. And these are exactly the words that the President of the Republic of Armenia used yesterday. And we win or lose this struggle together. So it's not going to be Republic of Armenia's, or Republic of Artsakh's victory or loss. It's going to be all of us, including diaspora. So since losing is not an option, and that's been clearly outlined, the issue is, what does each one of us do in order to bring about this victory? And as your question suggests, diaspora has a lot to do with this. Now, our boys, our soldiers, our civilian infrastructure, our civilian populations in larger Armenia, which includes our two constituent states, Republic of Armenia, Republic of Artsakh, are doing their part. You know, the names of the 31 heroes that have sacrificed themselves have already been published. There is damage to the infrastructure. Fighting is ongoing. So what is the diaspora going to do to aid Armenia? Well, let me outline sort of two directions that we're looking at, and going to reach out to our compatriots and communicate this message on a broader scale. First, it's the PR campaign. It's getting the word out there. It's using whatever means there are to influence the local governments to sort of evaluate the situation accordingly. In those countries that are responsive to popular dissent and popular sentiment, it's very important that our compatriots reach out to their public elected officials to make sure that they are aware of what's going on, to make sure that they are on the right side of history, to make sure that their broader governments look at this issue critically and impose sanctions on Azerbaijan, cut off all military aid to Azerbaijan, to lend support to Armenia and Artsakh in any way, form, and shape, to make sure that our compatriots in the diaspora are aware of what's going on, are mobilized and ready to do their part. As you've probably noticed, even celebrities, even social media celebrities in the United States, for example, have all gone to social media and have all been posting, all been making a call to arms. And that's very encouraging. We have to make sure that this is ongoing because, you know, both Armenia and Artsakh have declared a state of war, and there is a general draft in place. This is serious, very serious. We approach this very seriously, and I think that the diaspora also understands the depth of it. The second issue, of course, is material aid. Our means are limited. As you heard from the Deputy Foreign Minister, the damage to Artsakh's infrastructure is sizable, and again, the fighting is ongoing. We haven't seen the end of this. So there's an outpouring of support already that we're hearing from the diaspora. People want to know where to channel their aid, and a decision has been made that Armenia Fund is going to be that medium through which all donations should be channeled, because there's many other means, but right now it's the most practical, the quickest, and the most proper channel for folks to direct their aid. So those that are interested, we're making a call to arms. We've called it We Are Our Borders Together for Artsakh, and the campaign, they can reach information about this campaign at www.himnadram.org. I will mention that yesterday, this website was under massive attack by Azeri hackers, and the second half of the day was mostly unreachable. So the Azeris take this very seriously, and they're trying to prevent us from being affected. We must do the same.
If I may follow up real quickly, we also received the same report from representatives of the Republic of Armenia from Washington as well as Los Angeles earlier, a few hours ago, about himnadram.org having been hacked, and we were directed, or rather suggested and asked, that we disseminate armeniafund.org. So to the extent, I don't know if the Himnadram is now, the Himnadram site.org is hack-free, or it makes any difference. We were told here in Los Angeles to the Pan-Armenian Council, and we disseminated armeniafund.org. Is there a difference for the audience who may not know if there is a difference or not?
You know what? I have to double check on it, but for now, himnadram.org has been designated as the site. If in the next, very near future, in the next hour or so, there's a problem with the site, we'll have to make a recommendation that an alternate site be offered, because yes, people do feel an urgency to donate now, and they do want to contribute now, and we don't want to somehow disenfranchise those people or make it difficult for them to participate in this broader struggle. So we'll make an adjustment, but for now it's himnadram.org.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask Ms. Alexanian a follow-up question, really discussing a couple of themes that Mr. Tatoyan and Mr. Sinanian just raised, and that is the concept of this existential struggle. Ms. Alexanian, I was going to ask, because to those of us who have been following the events religiously over the last 24 hours, you're watching something on TV, and clearly there's a psychological element here, and I think that we need to personalize it somewhat. And if you wouldn't mind, to the extent that you can, to let us know of the psychology of the population right now in Artsakh. What is the feeling on the streets? What is the feeling within families as to what is happening and what the next steps are?
Well, it's a little bit hard to describe it, because feelings are different depending on the family, especially coming from the fact that, for example, yesterday in the bunker, we had families whereby the kids were in the bunker, their dads were on the front line, and there were cases whereby the staff members of the building, the bunker of which we were using, it was an infrastructural building, the staff had their sons, one of them had two sons on the border, and he was rushing to be sent there as a volunteer to be close to his sons. So the overall feeling was that we have to keep in the bunkers, meaning the kids, the elderly, and the women, being sure that our guys will protect us. And they were closely following the news, asking around. Not everyone had Wi-Fi because down on the ground, the connection was not so good. But they were all kind of thinking, what are the news? Everyone was living from the news, on the news from the front line, following the information offices, the central information offices, information coming from the front line, following the briefings. But one thing was clear, that we'll definitely win because we have no other choice. If we lose, those kids in the bunkers will become a target, a direct target, not a remote target, but actually a direct one. That's why I think there is this realization in the minds of every Artsakh person, because this is not for the first time that we're going through this. Most of the people have seen it already 3 or 4 times. For young ones, of course, this was the first experience. We hope that it will be the last one. But we are united in the fact that we know that this is indeed a battle for life and death, and there's no other choice. We either defend ourselves or we get killed. Exactly as it was in 1990s, in the early 90s. So in that terms, nothing had changed, and in the terms that we believe that our army is the only guarantor of our security, is also largely believed by the population, and they know it because every family has someone, or not just one, but actually a few sons on the border.
And thank you. And I want to follow up with the 2 ombudsmen with respect to that rather sincere and genuine message regarding, the civilians that are in the that have been targeted and are at risk. How successful have your outreaches been? And we'll start with Mr. Beglarian. How successful the outreach has been. The difference between now and the 90s, if there is one, is the fact that we have access to internet and social media outlets. Have you been able to get the message out to counterparts, Mr. Beglarian, and outside organizations with respect to the human rights situation, the humanitarian law violation situation, and the general condition of the civilian population? Have you been able to outreach?
Yes, but I would say it doesn't matter so much because I don't see the feedback or the feedback needed, whatever we want to see, and whatever their pure essence, human rights oriented essence supposes. We sent our statements and some facts yesterday to many international organizations. Actually, I would say that there is 0 feedback with some exclusions. But also, together with Mr. Tatoyan, we are continuing our efforts, and Mr. Tatoyan for sure has much more communication and channels to deliver our facts and statements, and I'm sure that he's working directly too, and hopefully some of them will give enough sufficient feedback, assessment, and they will use their leverage to both assess the situation properly, but also to affect the Azerbaijani and Turkish behavior. However, it doesn't mean that we will not continue our efforts. Fact-finding mission will publish reports on that once we have sufficient data, and will outreach the international community, especially human rights community, and hopefully we'll get preferable feedback from them, response from them.
Mr. Tatoyan, what about your office? How successful have outreaches been to international, particularly European institutions and organizations?
Well, starting from early morning yesterday, we have been communicating with international, well, we send at least all the communications through special channels, but I have to say that it was a bit difficult yesterday because it was Sunday, and in many places, organizations, there were just non-working days, but we could anyway communicate them due to our personal contacts. My whole almost staff, responsible people were here, and we have set up 24 hours, 24/7. Working with working shifts, working days, let's say. And I have to say also that Azerbaijan is also very active from their side. Their ombudsman, though of course I have to say that you can't compare the levels of independence. Armenian human rights defender or the ombudsman's institution enjoys international A status, because I have to say that all national human rights institutions, they undergo specific accreditation process. They get their accreditations by an independent group operating under the umbrella of the United Nations. So we have A status. This is the highest status. It means that we have the highest credibility and enjoy the highest level of independence. Azerbaijan has B. So it means that international community sees them as moreover, not that reliable source, and not having that real, let's say, independence. That is why, for example, for us, there is a special channel. By the way, we are just working for the beginning of the working day in Europe to submit special communications to the UN Human Rights Council. And as an A status institution, we have a special channel, not the government. So we act independently, and we submit our communications directly to member states of the UN, governments, and international organizations. So this is another channel that we will use, of course. And I have to say also the specificity of our work here. You know, all national human rights institutions, they have specific requirements for their competencies. And there are specific Paris principles, and with these Paris principles, we have to comply, actually. And that is why it's a bit sensitive to our, let's say, activities related to Artsakh. But since we deal with ethnic Armenians' rights, with the right to life, etc., definitely we have here our competence, and there are specific projects even role of they're aimed at enhancing the role of national human rights institutions in conflict zones. So we act within this specific mandate, let's say, like a conflict zone human rights institution, let's say. You know, as Mr. Beglarian very rightly said, it is, since this issue has also a political component, and many organizations, due to political constraints, due to objections receiving from Azerbaijan, there is no, that you can see the lack of, at least at the public level, lack of reaction from their side, which is very bad. And I have to say that, wanted to say that Azerbaijan is also very active. They are submitting, they are just massive information about presenting Armenians as aggressors, let's say, that we are bombing their civilian settlements, doing, you know, conducting these hostilities, etc. So that is why we have to submit, to be as quick as we can, as credible, reliable as we can, and to submit this objective information. That is why fact-finding missions here are very important, because later then international judicial bodies or international organizations, they do base their conclusions on this kind of fact-finding missions. You know, just to be very realistic, we have to rely, of course, on ourselves, on our military, on our soldiers, on their functions to protect ourselves. Because international, yes, we need to submit to international community all the necessary information, all the accurate information. This is important because basically member states, they form their positions, conclusions, recommendations based on this kind of information. If we do not do this, Azerbaijan will fill this gap, so to say, and with its information, and will present Armenia as an aggressor. So anyway, we have to act. But in terms of concrete protection, in terms of let's say real protection of life and the population, peaceful population, we have of course to rely on ourselves and be as strong as we can, as united as we can, together with not only Artsakh and Armenia, but diaspora as well, which is crucial.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I may come back to you, Mr. Sinanian, you are the High Commissioner of Diaspora Affairs, and the diaspora is 10 million or more strong. To the extent the diasporan communities in places of conflict, if you will, from Beirut to Syria, to even Istanbul and beyond in Turkey or the Middle East, what is the temperature, if you will, of the safety or any harassment or any undue influence by the Azeri-Turkish media and lobby? And coming back full circle, take all the time you need and spell out for all of us, not just on this call, but all who may be watching far and beyond, what each and every one of us can do on your behalf and on behalf of the Armenian nation of Artsakh and Armenia. Thank you.
Well, I'll go to the second question first. Each one of us has their own unique role to play in all of this. We kind of talked about the lobbying, the political pressure, the communication of the reality on the ground to both society at large and also to elected officials. That's one approach. That approach may not work for every community, because some of the countries where a large number of our compatriots reside are not responsive to public safety, or for whatever reasons, they can't be seen as taking a side. But that doesn't mean that there is no role to be played for those individuals. For example, I will name one. If US Armenians, those Armenians that reside in the United States, due to the political structure of the country, can exercise lobbying efforts, as that is part and parcel of the political structure of the country. In Russia, for example, all day yesterday, there was a call to arms, and literally in Russia, a call to arms means men signing up and asking, okay, we're ready to be at the front, get us there. So, this is a phenomenon that you will not see on the streets of Los Angeles, yet on the streets of Rostov or Moscow, this is happening now. So every Armenian has a role to play. And right now, we're in the process, not only our commission, our office, but also the government at large, each figuring out what it is that we need from each community, taking into consideration the specificity of those communities. In terms of your first question, I'm going to set aside the Polsahai and the community that resides in what is today the Republic of Turkey aside for a moment, because that's a very special case. In the Middle East, we have fortunately not received any news or communication of any problems or pressures being exercised against our compatriots. In some countries, we don't anticipate for that to happen. In others, like Lebanon, where there is an increased Turkish presence, this is something that may come up. And I think the people on the ground, our compatriots there, are well aware of this. And if and when that happens, we'll have to exercise all of our means in Armenia to confront the issue. Turkey has become an omnipresent, aggressive, expansionist state that harbors dreams and of grandeur and dreams of recreating the Ottoman Empire. For the first time in this conflict, Turkey's not merely behind the scenes egging Azerbaijan on and aiding them with advice and maybe even military training. Turkey's on the ground today. That's becoming clearly apparent. President of Artsakh talked about it. The Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia talked about it. They both talked about it openly. There's now confirmed reports of the presence of Syrian mercenaries from Idlib, from the sort of fundamentalist controlled, Turkey-controlled parts of Syria that are participating in the fighting. So I want to go back to that initial point that you made that Azerbaijan's 10 million, we're only 2.5, 3 million. The balance is not, in this conflict, it's no longer that. That's not the balance. We're not confronting a 10 million person Azerbaijan, although that number is highly doubtful. But we're confronting Turkey and Azerbaijan. Turkey has become our opponent. I think Azerbaijan has accepted the fact that on their own, they cannot withstand the might of the Armenian nation. But Turkey is now part of the problem versus all of the Armenian nation. That means all of Armenia with its 2 constituent states and all of diaspora. Of course, we also have allies. We also have friends who are there, but truth be said, we can only rely on ourselves. And that's the Armenian nation, wherever we may be. So this existential fight, at some point, our neighbors have to understand that we're here, we've been here for a long time, and we intend to be here for much longer. And once we get that point across to them, we'll be in a much safer place. Unfortunately, our neighbors are not civilized nations. They're not, we talk about two neighbors, right? Azerbaijan and Turkey. We have been unable to communicate that to them in normal terms. They constantly bring violence upon us, and we're constantly having to defend ourselves. And this is yet another episode. I think this time around, we intend to take this point much deeper across to them and be much more persuasive. Unfortunately, that's going to take a lot of sacrifice on our part.
We thank you, Mr. Sinanian. We at the Armenian Bar Association and within it, the Armenian Rights Watch Committee, understand one thing which is very clear and frankly, it is astonishing to see the lobbying efforts of Azerbaijan and Turkey painting a picture of Armenia and Armenians and Artsakh as aggressors, because as the status quo, we had no reason to be aggressors. It is they who keep on speaking of Artsakh not being Armenian land. It is they who keep on threatening to destroy the Armenian nation. It is them who have been engaged in an arm race with themselves, and it is them who are the aggressors. We know that, and we thank you and each and everyone on this panel for being strong and remaining strong, and we ask that you stay safe while being strong and knowing that every one of us that are far away from you physically are right next to you spiritually, with our heart, with our mind, with our souls. Karnik?
It starts. May I just add, if I may? I think they have started again. I think soon we'll have to go to the bunkers again. But before we go, I think what diaspora can do here, we have to understand that basically what Azerbaijan is doing, it's closing access to international human rights organizations, everyone, basically in every possible way, it tries to isolate Artsakh from the outside world. If it isolates it, it's easier to defeat it. For diaspora, it's important to start and helping us in the information sphere. What they can do, they can go to Artsakh, this տեղեկատվական shtab. We can put the link, if we can, Garnik, put the link to the website of the, and every diaspora Armenian who has free time, who wants to be helpful, they can translate this information in different languages and publish it on their website, on Twitter, on, I mean, let's win the information war here so that Azeri narrative can be changed and the truth can be brought to the world. So that next time when they want to try something, there is a memory within the world community that this was the reality. They basically want to squeeze us where we are. And we have the diaspora potential that we can use to break out this isolation and to get the information from the first hand to the international community and try to raise as much awareness as possible as to what is happening here. As we're talking here, I don't know if you can hear it, the explosions have started again. They're hitting in town, I think, and we'll have to start making moves. But I think what is important, because unfortunately we don't have so many language specialists in all different languages. We try to do our best to translate it into English, Russian, French, sometimes German. But please, whoever has free time, they can just go to that very website. They can also share the information that we disseminate on the MFA website, on the Artsakh Ombudsman's website, and the Ministry of Defense website. Translate and disseminate it.
Thank you, Ms. Alexandra. I think that's, please be safe. Do what you need to do at this moment. I'd like to close by saying, first and foremost, this idea of self-reliance, like Ms. Alexandra just mentioned, we are not powerless in this at all. In fact, we are very powerful. And I think some of the themes that were communicated today is the fact that this is the existential game. This is an opportunity to show extreme vigilance, not on the field, whether it's on the battlefield, whether it's in the diaspora through communication and information. Though there is a war being fought on social media, there's a PR war being fought, there's a narrative being told that is not, that needs to be corrected and needs to be won over. We have strength in that. And I think what we heard from Ms. Alexandrian is that there is an expectation, a potential. Let's realize that potential here in the diaspora, each of us with access, with information. We will share links here. At the same time, I think it's important for people to realize it's a moment right now to raise yourself with your bootstraps and maintain that vigilance. And I think Mr. Sinanian wants to say a closing remark.
I do want to make one more add a point to the narrative. This is, this may sound cliche, but this is a struggle between good and evil. This is a struggle between freedom and oppression. This is a struggle between a people that now live in a democratically elected free society versus a dictatorial authoritarian country of Azerbaijan, where a dynastic leadership is oppressing its own people, yet trying to enforce its control over a people that are free. So this is a theme that is resonates very effectively in the West. So we need to stress on that. Both the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh in the last 2 years have held democratically held elections, as a result of which our people have chosen those individuals that rule them. This is something that's unheard of in Azerbaijan. So, trying to somehow impose control over Azerbaijan also expands geographic area into land where people are free and to impose dictatorship. So, yes, the diaspora is a force multiplier for us. We have limited resources, yet in the face of diaspora, we have a huge resource that needs to be fully mobilized right now.
I want to thank you, Mr. Sinanian. You hit the nail on the head, and I just want to say really quickly in closing, as we're speaking right now, and as Ms. Alexanian has noted with respect to the shelling that she's hearing, we just got notice that that certain websites and information sites in Artsakh are now down. This is all the more reason why we in the diaspora have the opportunity to make sure that we can get the messages that we're hearing out. It is very important. It is a show of solidarity in a way like no other that wasn't possible, quite frankly, in the 90s, but is possible today. We know this story, and as Zara said, good and evil, and we know an even closer story of the last century. This is that same story playing out. And I think it's imperative upon all of us to do everything within our power, especially at this moment when, as we're speaking, we are witnessing, the channels of communication being cut and the isolation that Ms. Alexanian was speaking about. We can't let that happen. We aren't going to let that happen. But I think that story of vigilance and an aggressive action with respect to getting information about the situation out, true information out, and bringing Artsakh out of that isolation is imperative. Artsakh has taught us that the story of Armenian history of the last century was that the story of loss and dispersion was going to stop, and it stopped it in the 90s. It stopped it, and it built that democratic society. And it's imperative, and it's upon us. It's on our shoulders collectively to make sure that new story is the story that's going to be told to our children and grandchildren. This is that moment, and I don't think any of us should think that this is just, an average run-of-the-mill call. It's not a call. It's not a call that for anything other than if you care about the existential struggle that we face as an Armenian people. This is the story, and we are living the story at this moment. And it's important for us to energize and maintain that vigilance. I know each of the people on this call personally, and I have to say we are blessed with their competence, with their expertise, with the sheer ability and dedication that they bring to their offices. I think we should be proud of that. We need to bring that diligence, that competence, and that success, if you will, to our own endeavors in getting this information out, and as much as we can, as broad as we can. So I want to thank everybody. Mr. Ghazarian, if you have any closing thoughts.
Artsakh has been for so long the symbol of power of the Armenian survival. And if they are going to try and silence the voice of Artsakh by shutting down websites or telecommunications or whatever, it is upon each and every one of us in the diaspora to give voice for the power of Artsakh until Artsakh can be heard directly from Artsakh. I want to thank Armine Alexanian. I want to thank Artak Beklarian. I want to thank Arman Tatoyan. I want to thank you, Zare Sinanian. And I want to thank you, Karnik, for putting this panel and discussion together, committing on behalf of the Armenian Bar Association Board of Governors and each and every member of our association that we will be standing at the ready 24/7, 25/8 if need be. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope that in the next 24 to 48 hours, we can connect again, either individually or collectively, to report back on what's going on. And hopefully we will be sharing with you successes on our end as well. And together we will overcome this, and we will move forward in the way that we are projecting and have projected now for 30 years. So thank you again for participating today. Please be safe, and please know that you can call on us at your whim. We are here.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing this, Mr. Kerkonyan and Mr. Ghazarian.
Please, our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love Manatsek.